wish the summer would never end. It's the best summer of my whole life.
Your hair is winter fire, January embers. My heart burns there, too.
This was Poor Town.
Yeah, still is. That's all I need.
The wave of filmmaking in Vancouver started in 1984. I think the dollar dropped. And so more shows started to go, oh, you can get a bigger bang for your buck in Vancouver. And we're only 2 hours away from LA.
Hey! I'm back!
When the time came for us to start producing, I had Vancouver implanted in my head as a place to go.
You think we're gonna let you have all the fun there, Billy boy?
Having such a big production over such a long period of time created a huge buzz.
In '89, it was really busy in town. Okay, here we go, and roll, please.
The studio that we used was called The Bridges, and it was an abandoned shipyard building that was converted.
I was working at Thomas Special Effects, which is a local special effects house here in Vancouver, owned by John Thomas. He had a great stable of crew people. He had all these people that he nurtured and had what we call real-world abilities. Welders, woodworkers, people that work with fiberglass. They are all the veterans of the film industry that Vancouver has created. It put a lot of people to work. It used a lot of locations, and it also put Vancouver on the map.
Cut! Very nice!
Why are you guys anywhere?
We're sort of a club.
I can remember going to the movies, and they used to have Saturday matinees. We'd all line up, usually with our money tied in a handkerchief or something so we wouldn't lose it. And then we'd get in the theater, and everybody would turn their popcorn boxes into bugles. And then the giant grasshoppers would come on and destroy Chicago or London. I wrote about some of this stuff in a book called It. It's funny. I think a lot of us have only the haziest memories of our childhood.
I don't remember much of it at all, what we did.
We can access some of the good memories, and maybe we can access some of the really bad memories if a bully beat us up on the schoolyard.
You're dead!
But what I discovered in writing it was that the more I thought about my childhood, and the more those memories came back.
There's symbolism everywhere in the writing that Stephen King created to express the fears of all children that go through feeling like a loser, feeling like an outsider.
You're only here because Mom says it's our Christian duty.
And that's what the Losers Club was about, and that's the bond that kept these people together, because they didn't find sanity, peace, or even really a loving family except with each other, their chosen family.
We're 7 now. Lucky 7.
The gold of the book were the kids. That's where I responded. I think it's where the audience responded. That horror was the icing on the cake, and very particular icing in this case.
We had a casting director in Canada by the name of Sid Kozak, and Mark and I did the U.S. casting.
We were looking for 3 major things with the kids. One was a sense of humor.
Richie Toge is my name.
One was they always had to do a scene that was painful and heartfelt.
You killed my brother George, you bastard!
And then they also had to be scared. A lot of times when you see them right off, you go, they're not prepared emotionally to handle this yet. You're looking for an old soldier. You're looking for people that have a pain, and kids that could truly, truly feel depth, truly feel the fear without projecting it. Truly feel the camaraderie of the humor of the group. And when you're coming in alone, that's hard for those kids.
All these different characters that seem to come from different backgrounds all had the same thing in common. They're misfits, they're outcasts, they have an undesirable home life.
What you got there?
They don't feel like they're worth anything.
It's a losers club.
And yet, when they all work together, they are literally unstoppable.
I think the 6 of us could put you in the hospital. 7.
We went to the producers to do a mix and match. We wanted to have 3 in each role for the first one and see how the kids work together.
It was challenging having kids.
Eddie, which way is steering?
And adults.
That way.
And you had to cast both in the like.
Like Stand By Me, the challenge was in finding adults that would both physically match up with them. This was a case where I think the network was completely right in its choices.
You really needed to believe Seth Green grows up to be Harry. I feel like every one of those parts, there's a poignancy involved because those kids, I believed that they grew up to be those people.
At that time, what was really popular was to find the iconic TV actors that would be ensemble players.
The ideas kept coming. Richard Thomas for Bill, those were quick decisions in an office.
John Ritter, Harry Anderson, Annette O'Toole, Richard Masser, Dennis Christopher, Tim Reed.
Stephen King's It.
I mean, those were like a gold mine of actors.
We were getting TV's best, and then pile Tim Curry on top of that. Well, we knew we had something.
They all came together wonderfully.
That's lightning in a bottle. You just don't always get that.
The adult actors wanted to spend time with the kids, wanted to get to know them.
We had a Lucky 7 camp for the express purpose of having the children and the adults interact and work out business. Bill Denbrough goes like this. It's no accident. We brought the group that wasn't being shot right then in for 3 days simply to have them develop
tus
little tricks
trailers,
of that sort.
visita mi
So
canal.
it really would feel a veracity to the whole thing.
When you see that first part and those kids who then later become those adults, the end result was, I think, very successful because of the characters who were more in sync.
And I think that paid just untold dividends.
It was really important for Tommy Lee Wallace that all the kids were bonded in reality so that that would come across on screen.
I mean, are we men or are we mice?
We're mice!
You feel this trust that he has for you, and as much as he knows about all the characters and how all the puzzle pieces fit together, he knew how much our characters meant to us.
To the Losers Club.
All right, the losers go out.
The first kid that was cast was Jonathan Brandis, because he just was rich. And when you look at it, oh my God, he can reach points of pain and depth very simply, deeply, very quickly.
It's some kind of monster. And it's right here in Derry.
I had a crush on Jonathan Brandis, for sure. I thought he was pretty cute. My heart burns there too. I remember he was on the cover of every Teen Beat magazine.
Brought an awful lot of gravity to that role that somehow was a good emotional match for his adult counterpart, Richard Thomas.
I remember Jonathan because we met, we talked, to get a feeling of the same person, but that felt like it was an essential meeting to have. I don't know if he had to put a mole on his cheek. He did. They made him put a mole on his cheek. Oh, the poor kid. That's terrible. That's right. He had to wear a mole. Oh, God.
They both had something in their personalities that's serious, that takes the cruel world and the hurts and the angers and the angst of it all and takes it personally and wants to do something about it.
I'm going back in. This time I'm going to kill it.
There's a sense of nobleness about both of those people. And Jonathan had that as a child.
Now listen, you guys don't have to do this.
And he was the natural leader of the kid actors, too. He didn't do it by making a lot of noise. He just did it by being who he was.
I felt very close to that character when I read it. When a script comes to you or a play text and you read it, you can feel the proximity of the character, the affinity that you have, and you can feel the distance. But with Bill, I just thought, oh no, I know how this feels, I know who this guy is.
It was the Bill, Georgie, Pennywise sequence with the observation of what siblings were, but emotionally I believed in the truth of those brothers loud and clear, and I thought the scene was one of Steve's best.
You made it for me? Can I go sail it?
I remember the scene assembling the
tus
boat with
trailers,
Jonathan Brandis and
visita
giving
mi
him the
canal.
kiss and how awkward that was.
Yuck.
But he was a great guy.
I was completely stunned. I had no idea that he had been suffering any kind of depression or any other issues. All I knew is he was working I think he just finished a movie with Bruce Willis, Hearts War. He had an incredible run on Sequest. He'd learned the craft of directing.
What you do is sit and watch 70s television on channel, and just to find out all the ways you shouldn't direct a television.
It's just, they're shot kind of cheesy, and I just kind of want to learn how to do something different with television.
He was doing everything a resourceful actor could do. I think he had everything in front of him, and I was excited to see him moving forward. I was blown away because he's my age. That was probably one of the first times I ever even considered my own mortality.
Swear to me. Swear to me that if it isn't dead, it won't come back.
The kids moved me enormously, and I think about the scene at the end when they come together having won the battle but not the war, and hold hands and swear that they'll return.
Swear.
When you have a project that is such a good story and has such a good lead actor, it's really hard to screw it up musically. Finding a focus was the first thing. What's the music going to do? It could have been the most horrific alien ever to visit our planet in the form of a clown. But to me, it was kids in jeopardy. I focused on the kids. To a large extent, that's because Stephen King and I are about the same age. So when he writes about kids, that's my childhood. In the 50s, when we would play outside and build dams and all of that stuff, we would score our activities ourselves. If it was an action scene, we would do na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. When they jump on Silver to get away,
Go! Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
the reference of Hi-ho Silver means that through their minds was going ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-bum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-bum-bum. Now, I couldn't do the William Tell and get away with it with a straight face, but that was the focus.
We would put the pictures of the adults up first, and as they were cast, we would put the kids that were possible matches for them. And very early on, Sid sent us a tape and photos of Emily, who was the young Annette O'Toole.
Daddy, breakfast is ready.
And she set a very high bar. We kept looking for that role, but she was really an old soul that just matched what we were looking for.
The character of Bev was like my mom's childhood. She grew up in the 50s. Her name was Bev. She was poor. I just felt like I was playing her. And she said, those are the exact clothes that I used to wear. So it was this really unique opportunity to express my mother's story.
Emily was a singularly professional young actress. She was very mature for her years. She understood that the relationship between her film father and herself was not the relationship between her and me. And that makes life a whole lot easier.
For me, Beverly Marsh was the 1950s female child who was oppressed based on her gender.
Bev wants to help. I hope it's okay. I mean, she's a girl.
Very stringent ideals of how women should behave.
Let me see that.
Bev's father is extremely critical of her developing sexuality.
Poetry from some boy.
That's a big theme in the novel. The domestic and sexual violence against Bev is a major theme. It's not as much, I don't think, in the miniseries, but it's there a little bit.
My agent suggested me for Al Marsh, and the casting director said, oh, no, Frank's too much of a nice guy to play that character, no. They did 3 rounds of auditions. Finally, on the 4th round, the casting director let me go in and audition.
Casting against type when you're in that kind of project, that's part of our being creative and the agents and managers submitting them and saying, hey, what about this?
In the room, director says, "Would you shave your beard?" I said, "You hire me, my beard's gone."
Daddy, please. He felt so guilty having to smack me and be this intimidating, domineering, abusive father.
Let me alone! You just let me alone!
Come here! Sometimes it went a little over the limits in terms of discipline.
He always apologized at the end of the day, but while he was in the moment,
You get right the hell back here, baby!
he was just really scary. So I didn't have to do a lot of acting. The blood coming out of the sink stayed with me, because for a while I was like afraid to take showers. And there's that sewage, subterranean element to it.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Beverly Marsh.
Annette O'Toole I had worked with several times. I loved Annette and the person that she was and the actress that she was.
There wasn't a lot that I needed to do to become young Annette. They said that our mannerisms were similar.
Well, I was thinking, being Saturday now, you could come down with me to the Barrens.
My grandfather was an actor. He was in Gone with the Wind. I think they were having a 40th anniversary party. And there was a lady there who thought I was kind of precocious and cute and put me to work almost right away. I was 4.
The Jonathan Ritter match, little guy Brandon, unbelievable from the moment he came in.
10 out of 10.
I remember getting a call back and being an audition that I really wanted to get. And there were probably 20 kids in the room.
There was a lot of competition in that role.
I looked around and I remember noticing there weren't any other Bens. So I asked the AD, where are the other Bens? He said, it's pretty much just you. We're looking at a kid in Vancouver and I think one in Texas, but I think it's gonna be you. Nobody does that, right? Nobody tells you during the casting process that it's probably gonna be you. I had never been asked to read anything like this before.
They wouldn't treat us like this if Daddy were still alive.
Being a fat kid, you literally don't have a whole lot of roles that, I don't want to say have any meaning, but certainly don't have a lot of depth. A lot of times they're just about food jokes or fat jokes.
What a porker.
Or crazy off-the-cuff one-liners. They're the crazy characters.
Obviously, body image is a real key issue that a lot of kids are dealing with, probably more than you even imagine.
I'd never been given anything to read that wasn't that. There was a lot of gravitas with this. I remember, wow, I'm gonna have to be a real actor now. There's a moment where I pull some sugar daddies out of my pocket and eat them because I'm nervous. It was explained to me that there was some importance behind that because I protested a little bit. I was like, really? Do we have to do this right now? And the way Tommy articulated it, it made perfect sense, so I went along with the ride. I was willing to do those things because there was so much more meat with the character in so many situations that I'd never been able to portray before. I did those things willingly knowing that there would be a huge payoff in the end.
Knowing that you were going to be in the same movie with John Ritter and Harry Anderson and all these other actors who I'd already seen on TV at this young age was a phenomenal experience.
I was a huge fan of John Ritter. He was a massive influence of mine, not just as the kind of actor that he was, but the kind of comedian that he was, the type of physical comedian that he was, and how deeply sincere he was in all of his performances, regardless of the character that he was playing.
How important is being a star?
It's not important. Being thought of as a good actor is.
You had one of the most gifted comedians of his generation, too, so obviously it's going to be crazy, right?
He was always full of mischief, always up to something.
Here, boy. Answer. Oh, I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
I had my 2 kids come up and visit. They were big fans of John Ritter because they watched Three's Company. So when I told them I was working with him, my stature went way up. They have never forgotten it.
We were all stirring up our own fear. That's what we did at work all day, internally, to be ready to jump into these scenes, which were kind of hard and kind of dark. John would always lift us up with humor. He's always got humor in his back pocket, and I know it served us really well.
Here's a comic actor asked to play a dramatic role, and I never doubted for a minute that he could.
Mike?
Yeah, buddy. Listen, it's come back.
He walked in, and made everyone around him better, like a good team player in a sport, just by his professionalism, his sense of preparedness, and his ability to get down to business while still cracking wise and having fun.
John had a presence about himself that, interestingly, related more to young people.
Hang tough, champ. You're gonna make it.
I mean, he was adored by young people.
He really appreciated that we were just kids, and set should be an enjoyable place to be. Maybe he was a little bit responsible for all the boys' antics. I wouldn't be surprised.
He was, really interested in meeting me. I was him. I mean, he was one of my idols. But there was always a running joke that of all the kids, I looked the least like my counterpart. And he was quick to sort of notice that as well. So he pulled me aside and said, hey, let's spend some time together and think of some things that we can do that will sort of bridge that gap. There's that reveal where I'm standing there in the classroom, and then we cut to him, and he's biting his nail as well. That was what we came up with.
We tossed the football around on set with him because he was open to coming in and playing with the kids.
And I still remember him saying, when he's like, okay, I've had enough. And we're like, oh, come on, just a couple more. He's like, when I had no hair on my balls, I could throw the ball for hours.
Everybody had a Game Boy, so I was playing my Game Boy. I was playing Tetris. And he walked out to me and he said, what is this? I said, it's Tetris. Tetris. I said, yeah, Tetris. It's a game. Everybody knows Tetris. You live under a rock. He grabs it out of my hand and he starts playing. And from then on, I realized, okay, well, he's cool. He's not just John Ritter, the actor. He's John Ritter, my peer, and maybe, if I'm lucky, my buddy.
I got a call to come in and speak with the directors for this miniseries. I had not read the book, so, of course, I rushed out and spent all night and part of the day, because Stephen King writes so many long books. I took on the role for two reasons. One, it was a nice gig, and it was going to be for a long time up in Vancouver. The other reason was working with some of these actors that I had admired, worked with one or two of them. So that was really the two main reasons.
I brought this old photo album from home.
Marlon was really wonderful, and he did this little monologue at the beginning of the audition that was simple, deep, and had a lot of thought in it.
There was an Easter egg on here. But the ironworks exploded, and all these people got killed.
The lines that they had me reading were pretty much the lines from the actual classroom scene.
That role was so hard to audition for. It has very little material in the group scenes and takes a lot of negative language. When you're casting and you're being a bully to all these kids, wow, it takes a lot out of the day.
Thank God he looked physically a lot like what I looked like at his age. You always wonder, oh my God, you'll get somebody here who looks nothing like me. Like they bring in a white guy to play me. No, it didn't happen. Mike represents to me a few souls that I have met in my journey in life. And they're people who, for whatever reason, something happened in their childhood or young adulthood that has affected them for the rest of their life. I knew of a few people like him. And some ended in very tragic situations. Some fate just never seemed to bless them with a good hand, It's like always throwing snake eyes. And I think Mike was that kind of guy. I think that all of them had a sense of that they were on their way. They were young people full of life, full of wonder. And all of a sudden, this horrible thing happened to them. For the rest of their life, they have been hiding in psychological fear of life. And to me, Mike is the center spoke that brought it all back together.
Lucky 7.
That's how in the series, when they got a phone call from him, didn't take a whole lot of explanation.
Yeah? This is Mike Hanlon, Bill.
Immediately, they know what this is about.
Bill, it's back.
Now, they have to decide, do they want to
Aquí tus tráilers. Visita mi canal.
Stephen King's big secret is about the wonders and horrors of childhood.
Stanley boy.
And how you get through it, and how important friends are, and bonding with special people, like-minded youngsters. Those bonds can be as strong as steel. And his story is a demonstration of just how strong, when they made a promise to each other to return if it came back.
I swear it.
They were very solemn about it, and they meant it. And you see what happens when they have to keep that promise, especially in the case of Stan, who couldn't face keeping the promise. It was that horrible for him. And so he didn't bother to go back, but he did something else instead.
I think I'll take a bath.
Stan was most affected by Pennywise, and I suspect that even as an adult, that memory never was very far from his mind.
Stan saw it. Face to face. Not the clown, but he saw what was behind the clown.
When he got the call from Mike Hanlon...
Who did you say? Mike Hanlon.
...to come back to Derry, it brought back so much trauma to him that he just couldn't go on anymore. Couldn't even fathom the idea of possibly facing it again.
Goodbye. Bye, Stan.
And he chose an easy way out.
For somebody like me who grew up in the 70s, is a who's who. Richard Masur, who I'd literally grown up watching. He was the classic character actor. So him coming in, even though it was just for a day and he had a small part in it, I was like, wow.
I got a call from Jim Green, and he told me they were doing this miniseries.
We talked about what we could do to tie the character together between the adult and the child. He asked what I thought we should do, and for whatever reason, I immediately thought of this thing where I was going to grab my ear, and he liked it. I remember just thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing, and this well-respected actor just said he likes my idea. I was like, you know, over the moon about it.
My favorite part of the time I was there was when we set up that beauty shot of all of us on the staircase. I thought that was a wonderful shot. There was a lot of people who were really well known at that time, all standing up there.
To me, Stan Uris was an outsider, like the rest of the Losers Club. He was very by the book in that he didn't deviate from his school lessons or what his parents may have told him, but he was able to connect with these kids.
Lucky 7, Stanny. Said I was in.
And then explore a different part of himself.
One of the last cast was a little kid named Adam.
Some guy killed George, pulled one of his arms right off, just like a wing off a fly.
He was smaller than most of the other kids, and they were worried about the size matchup and everything.
My character, Eddie Kaspbrak, I would say that he was kind of the runt of the bunch.
How you doing, Eddie Spaghetti?
Which was already a fairly runty bunch. He was the quiet, shy kid who was also the youngest of the bunch, which I believe was true in reality. I think I was the only one who wasn't a teenager yet. I was still 12, and I think everyone else was 13 or above.
I went in and met with the producers, and we talked with Tommy Lee, and I guess they got the feeling from the work of mine that they had seen that I was right to play Eddie. And of course, after that, I devoured the book and was wondering how in the hell they were going to fit all of this beautiful writing and all of these amazing background stories of these characters into 2 nights of television.
On the last mix and match, Seth Green wasn't going to be able to make it. And Victoria was like, oh my God, we have to get him here. Everybody was confirmed except Seth, and we were a little nervous about that. So I actually drove to his house and picked him up.
It was exciting to know that I was getting close to it. When you audition, you mostly don't get jobs. You don't get 90% of the things you audition for, so to even get a call back and be in the chemistry part of it, I was very excited.
Seth was full of piss and vinegar, a great kid, clever and cracking jokes all the time.
I was a very curious kid, and then I was also interested in filmmaking very young.
Seth was the most precocious, but he had this intelligence about him, and he would say, I'm going to be a filmmaker one day.
Part of what they liked about me was me doing voices.
Your voices all sound the same, Richie. Thanks a bunch, Professor.
Impressions.
By George, Martha, it's the River Nile.
Or being fast-witted or funny.
Well, hey, Larry, Curly, and Mo. Beep, beep, Richie.
That was the thing that got me that part. Richie, to me, always seemed both fearless and also terrified. He was willing to keep going forward, even though he was scared.
Y tus trailers. Visita mi
He was the
canal.
first guy to make a joke about it.
Oh, come on. And then Harry Anderson, whom I didn't know, we had an instant rapport.